I am Jacob Chandler, and I'm a Boy Scout. Today is September the 20th, 2015. I will be interviewing Mr. Patrick Newcomb. He is a veteran of Desert Shield, Desert Storm era, and this is his son, Joshua Newcomb, who's also a fellow Boy Scout, and he'll be helping me interview today. This interview is part of my Eagle Scout Service Project. The LaSalle Veterans Exhibit and interviews are part of my Eagle Scout Service Project. The LaSalle Cultural Center of Gina, Louisiana will display my LaSalle Veterans Exhibit. Our mission is to preserve our LaSalle Parish heritage. The veterans of LaSalle Parish often have experiences from the time of service that go untold. Today I'm interviewing, Josh. Can you start with me?
Yeah. Alright. Today I am interviewing
your father?
My father, Patrick Newcomb. What war did you serve in?
I served in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and also served in Bosnia-Herzegovina during that conflict as well.
What branch of service were you in?
The Navy.
Yes, sir. Sorry. Oh, what rank you was in?
What was your rank?
I ended up as Petty Officer 2nd Class, which is E4. No, I'm sorry, E5.
Well, would you point to the areas where you served during the Desert Shield Storm era?
Yep, I was based in San Diego, North Island, and I was also based in Jacksonville for the other half of my tour. And from there, I went on 2 different cruises. The first deployment, we deployed on the USS Nimitz out of Seattle. We crossed the Pacific and went to the Philippines, Hong Kong, Thailand, on our way to the Persian Gulf, where we conducted flight operations to support Desert Shield, Desert Storm. On the way back, we came through the Philippines and Hawaii and ended up back in Seattle. The second deployment I made was when I was based in Jacksonville, Florida. We deployed out of Norfolk and we went across the Atlantic into the Mediterranean and spent most of our time conducting flight operations over Bosnia-Herzegovina, and we had a couple of port calls in Greece and Italy, and then we headed home.
Yes, sir.
How old were you when you entered the military training?
I was 17, and I got out when I was, 23.
Yes, sir. Why did you pick the Navy branch to serve in?
Well, I wanted to fly, but I knew I wasn't ready for college, so pretty much all the branches you have to have a college degree to be a pilot. But the Navy offered a air crewman position, and they could guarantee that I'd get that crewman position, versus all the other branches were basically go to boot camp and roll the dice, and maybe you'll get to fly. And I didn't want to roll the dice, so the Navy offered that guarantee, and it turned out that was probably one of the best enlisted jobs you could have. It was a phenomenal job, lots of training, but you did a lot of neat things.
Yes, sir. Would you point to the areas where you trained at for service in the United States?
Sure. So I went to boot camp in San Diego. We called it the Country Club. The weather was great. From there I went to Pensacola and spent about 4 months in Pensacola. I went through aircrew training school, or aircrew candidate school, and then rescue swimmer candidate school. They were both in Pensacola. After I finished that, I went up to Memphis, Tennessee, and it was called Millington, Tennessee, just outside of Memphis. And I went through what's called AWA school, which is Aviation Anti-Submarine Warfare Operators School, and they teach you how to detect and track submarines using all the gear that the And so that was my primary job on board the helicopter, was to work the radar, the sonar, ESM, and look for submarines, surface ships. From there, I went to San Diego, and we first went through SEER school, Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape School, and that was basically a mock POW training camp, and they taught you how to evade enemy, how not to get caught, and then when you did get caught, how to deal with the various torture techniques and how to handle that environment. When I graduated SEER school, I went to what's called Common Core, which was an advanced acoustics school for anti-submarine warfare. And then I went to, so that all took about 2 months, and then I went to SH-60 RAG school, which is the replacement school for Seahawk helicopters. So I went through 6 months of how to how to fly in the Seahawk helicopter, what all the systems did, how to work on that kind of thing.
Yes, sir. Well, let's see. So did you feel that your training adequately prepared you for your service? Yeah, I mean, it was an extensive training program. There are certain things that you just can't get prepared for, and there's certain things that you just have to learn from experience. But for the most part, sure, yeah, it was good, very good training. Yes, sir.
What was your training like?
Another complicated question, because there was so many various schools that I went through. Aircrew school was it was hard, but it was fun. You got to do like the helo dunker, where they hoist you above a pool, and you're in this box or this cage, and they drop you into the pool, and it sinks and turns upside down, and you're strapped in this thing, and you've got to get out, and so it was all kinds of stuff like that. The pressure chamber, where you're in there playing hopscotch with some guy, and they take you up to 30,000 feet, and you don't have any oxygen, and you start acting funny. And so that was kind of cool. Rescue Storm School was the second most difficult school in the Navy, second only to the SEAL teams. Very arduous training. From about 4 o'clock in the morning till about 4 in the afternoon, we were non-stop. Push-ups, sit-ups, flutter kicks, 5-mile runs in deep sand every day, swimming, practicing how to do CPR, first aid. Very, very difficult school. Started out with 40 students in my class, and 11 of us graduated. So that was the typical attrition rate was about 75%.
Wow. Yes, sir.
It was pretty hard. So AWA school was, it was what it was. You learn how to run the gear. But SEER school was another pretty difficult piece of training. I lost 12 pounds in about 7 days out there in the field, and I was probably skinnier than you, so I didn't have 12 pounds to lose. And I came back with a black eye, and I mean, it was pretty crazy training. So yeah, I mean, as a nutshell, it had its highs and lows, and it was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot.
Yes, sir. You go to the next page. All right. What positions did you serve in during the Desert Shield and Desert Storm time?
What positions?
Positions, yes, sir, or job assignments?
Well, I was an air crewman for the entire time, and I had a collateral duty. I think at that time I was the squadron's communications officer, so I handled all the classified information coming in and out of the squadron, and that's simply when I was not flying. But when you're in combat operations, it's typically around the clock, so you are you're either briefing, flying, eating, or sleeping. That's pretty much it. That's all you do during combat. So, you know, we might have a mission that takes off at 3 a.m., so you're up at 2, or you're up at, you know, maybe 1 o'clock getting chow, getting geared up, go to the briefing room, get briefed, you know, you take off. It's a 4-hour mission. You come back, you spend an hour doing your collateral duties, and then you hit the sack, and you wake up 4 hours later and you start it all over again. So that's kind of how life was during those times. And, you know, it's not always like that. When you're transiting to and from the area of operation, things kind of slow down, and you get to actually sleep 8 hours or more, or maybe, you know, sleep 12 hours or whatever. But those are the main positions, just basically crewing.
Yes, sir. What was some of the gear and equipment that you had that was issued to you?
So I had you know, flight suits, boots, obviously. We had an SV2 vest, which is a survival/flotation vest that we wore, and it had what's called a HEEDS bottle helicopter emergency egress device, which, if you got trapped in a helicopter, if it crashed and you were underwater, it gives you about 5 minutes of extra breathing time to get yourself out. Then, as far as the rescue swimmer gear that I had wetsuits, fins, mask. I had a harness, and I can't remember the designation of it, but then I had a flotation device over that you know, I could inflate if I needed to. You know, knife, survival equipment. So that was my rescue swimmer gear. They issued us a couple of different weapons when we flew in combat operations. We had an MP5, we had a Beretta 9mm, and then our main weapon, which was more of a defensive weapon than offensive weapon, was an M60. So it shot 7.62mm. It was a machine gun, about 2,000 rounds a minute. And that amounted to about a pea shooter compared to what was shooting back at us, but it was something, you know, you could keep their heads down if you were flying over. But I think that's about it.
Yes, sir. Did you feel that it was reliable and appropriate for the situations you were in?
Definitely not. No, back then, the Navy, I don't know, I guess the Navy spent too much money on its ships. And when it came to providing weapons and gear, it was pretty tough getting that from the storekeepers. In fact, so bad that we were cross-training with the Air Force a lot over there. So we would fly into the Air Force base and say, look, you know, I need this, this, and this, and can we order it through you? And they'd say, oh, well, we could probably work that out. And do you have like ball caps? And we can't find a spatula. Do you have a spatula? So we would go and commandeer spatulas from the mess hall, buy a bunch of ball caps, go into the Air Force base, and trade them for camo netting and, you know, H harnesses or whatever it was that we needed. And that's how we made do. But the M60, it was a great weapon, but at the end of the day, it was the same round that the AK-47s were shooting. So it was a small round weapon, and it really was not meant, it was not adequate for what we needed. We really needed something bigger. And of course, that's what they used in Vietnam. All the Hueys had M60s that were hanging out of it. So traditionally that was the weapon, but nowadays they've got 50 calibers, they've got Gao-2Bs, which are Gatling guns. They're much better equipped these days than they were back when I was in. The Hellfire missiles, I think they've got forward-mounted 40mm cannons now on those things, so it'd be nice.
Yes, sir. What all medals and decorations were you awarded?
Off the top of my head, so I had Good Service Conduct Medal, Meritorious Unit Commendation, National Defense Ribbon, Expert Marksman Ribbon, Kuwaiti Liberation, I know there's a couple more, but I just can't remember.
Yes, sir.
Then I had aircrew wings that I wore, gold wings. Anyway, that's some of them at least.
Yes, sir.
How did you earn them?
Well, Kuwaiti Liberation, you had to be part of Desert Storm and be there when Kuwait was liberated. So that's why they call it that. Good conduct ribbon or medal, you earn that by keeping yourself out of trouble for 4 years in the military. As long as you don't get arrested or do something real bad, you get the medal every 4 years. Unit commendation, our unit was awarded that for, I think it was, we were the first squadron to deploy with the H-60 Foxtrot helicopters. We replaced the old H-3s. So during Desert Shield, Desert Storm, not only were we trying to keep up with the pace of our missions and try to complete our missions with this new helicopter, but we were also writing the tactics manual. There were no manuals that we could go to and say, okay, how do we do a vertical board search and seizure, or how do we do a special forces insertion or extraction in the 60 Foxtrot. There were no manuals, so we were literally writing those manuals as we were going. And so we were awarded the unit com for that.
Yes, sir.
Could you describe a typical day in service?
No, there was no typical day in service. There were some days, I heard it described once as 59 minutes of pure boredom followed by 1 minute of sheer terror. That was pretty much the military life. There were days that you just sat around and literally did nothing, and you were playing cards, or you were sleeping, or you were writing a letter. Back then we didn't have email, we didn't have Wi-Fi or computers. And then, there were some days that you were just flying constantly, you're exhausted, you're, doing crazy missions that you get back and you take your helmet off and go, I just can't believe I just survived that, So there was really no typical day. It was kind of all over the board.
Yes, sir.
What was the food like?
The food. The thing about the Navy is that the small ships and the submarines, they get the best chow. I don't know why, but I guess they don't have to cook for as many people, so they can make better food. But when you're deployed on an aircraft carrier like I was, they're feeding 5,000 mouths every meal. So you can only imagine what it takes and what kind of food and how it's got to be prepared to accomplish that mission. But remarkably enough, the Nimitz had pretty good chow. We often would have king crab legs, steak. Breakfast you'd have your typical eggs, bacon, sausage, toast, cereal, pretty much whatever you wanted. Lunch, they'd have hamburgers, hot dogs, French fries, and then they would have a line with rice and stew. They'd have all kinds of different things on the menu, and they would serve. Let's see, I want to say it was 5 meals a day, 5 or 6 meals a day, because it was around the clock. I mean, people. Not everybody sleeps at night on the carrier. You've got 2 shifts, a 12-hour shift during the day and a 12-hour shift at night for most ship personnel. So there's somebody up eating 24/7. So the chow was pretty good. The chow in the Roosevelt, I don't know, it wasn't that great. But it wasn't bad. I mean, and every once in a while we would fly and do missions off of small ships. So we would land on a little frigate, and we would eat with them for a meal or two, and man, we get spoiled doing that. In fact, it was so much better on the small ships that if we were to even deliver mail to a small ship, and a lot of times you can't even land on these small ships, so I'm lowering this mail bag down on a hoist to some guy that's got a hook, and he's hooking it, and we'll always radio ahead and say, okay, we're bringing your mail in, can we ask you guys for some box lunches? And they would always give us some box lunches, and the box lunches were phenomenal. They were way better than what we'd have on the aircraft carriers. So.
What did soldiers usually do while off duty?
What did they do? They went to church a lot. They played badminton. That's a complicated question. So, you're 18, you're in a foreign country, and so, there's a lot of drinking going on. I'll say that. I'm trying to keep it PG here. There were a lot of things that you could do, like when I pulled into Italy, we were in Naples, and that's like a Navy town, and 5,000 sailors were flooding that town when we pulled in from our carrier. So I didn't want to hang out in Naples, so we caught the train and went down to Pompeii and down to what was that town? It's just an amazing town. Anyway, so we would take little tours and go see, like, when we were in Pattaya Beach, Thailand, we went up to Bangkok and spent the day. So, a lot of travel, a lot of sightseeing would go on, a lot of partying. When you're on an aircraft carrier, on a ship, and you're in combat operations, and you've been there for 3 months straight, you haven't seen land, or most of the sailors hadn't seen land. There's a lot of tension, there's a lot of angst that you pull into a port, and these guys, they needed to release it somehow, and that's how most of us turned to, is alcohol. But it wasn't all that. I mean, there was a lot of other stuff going on. We had fun.
Yes, sir.
What did soldiers usually buy with their pay?
Buy with their pay? Well, when you're on the ship, there's not much to buy. I mean, we called it gidunk. That's a Navy term for junk food. Candy, cookies, chips, drinks. You buy some of that. They had a little store on the ship that you could buy stuff like that. When you went to port, oftentimes you were buying souvenirs. Maybe you're paying for a tour of some place. And then other than that, just any other typical young person spends their money on. Clothes and girlfriends. Girlfriend always wants something.
Yes, sir.
Can you share any missions that stand out to you in particular?
Yeah. I'll tell you about one night we were in the Pacific Ocean just off of Seattle. I think we were just on a detachment. It was in November and it was really cold up there. And we had been flying around, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we look down and we see this huge life raft that you'd find on a ship, and it was covered so you couldn't see inside of it. It was one of these yellow inflatable ones. So we didn't know where it had come from. We didn't know if there was anybody in it. We didn't know if there'd been a ship that sank and these people are stranded. So we kind of flew over it, hovered over it, hoped that someone would stick their head out, but no one did. So we're like, okay, well, what if they're unconscious? So we finally just decided to go ahead and put me in the water and find out if there was anybody in it. So by then it was nighttime, and the sea state, it was like 30-foot sea state, huge waves. So I went in the water, and I remember we lowered me down because we couldn't get close enough to the water to let me jump out because the waves just too high. So as they were lowering me down, the wave would hit me, and then all of a sudden I'd be airborne again. Another wave would hit me, and then I'd be airborne again. Finally, I got tired of getting beat up, so as soon as the next wave hit, I unclipped and I started swimming for it. And I was probably dropped 50 yards from the raft, and so I was swimming for it. And at one point I could see it, and then it would just disappear, and then I could see it, and so, anyway, I finally got there. And I remember being terrified of what I was about to find in this thing, so I rip it open real quick, like, it was like peeling back a Band-Aid. I was like, just get it over with, right? I look inside, and it was empty. I'm like, oh my gosh, all this for nothing, right? So I pulled out my knife and popped it, and it sank. And trying to get back to the helicopter at night in that kind of waves, it took me probably about 4 or 5 tries to get a hold of the hook and get attached before the thing ripped me out of the water. And I was freezing cold. It was just that was a crazy night.
Yes, sir. Did you ever figure out why there's a raft floating out there?
You see a lot of crazy things on the ocean, things that are just floating around, and you think, well, where does this come from? But never knew.
Do you recall any particular humorous or unusual event?
Oh yeah. We like to do a lot of pranks on the ship to pass time. And one of the pranks was as you travel through the Straits of Gibraltar, Spain and Morocco are not very far away from each other, and there are these huge cliffs, and across the cliffs are these high tension lines, power lines. And I mean, they are really high, but when you're on an aircraft carrier, that aircraft carrier just barely fits underneath those cables. So the rumor is that these monkeys can climb up these cable lines and drop down onto your ship. So we always go through the straits at night because of security reasons. We don't want the whole world knowing whether there's an aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean or not. So about a day ahead of the passage of the straits, we're getting all of our new guys fired up and saying, we got to post some monkey watches tonight, and since you're the new guy, guess what? You get monkey watch. So they're like, really? So you get them all dressed up, and we take duct tape and duct tape the pant legs, and put gloves on them and duct tape their wrists, and we get combat helmets on them with lights, and we give them a broom pole with a chem light at one end and a flashlight on the other, and we just get them all geared up. And the whole time we're like, okay, look, if you see a monkey, all you do is point them out and call for somebody. Don't get tangled up with a monkey. I mean, they are mean, and they get all psyched up and scared, and so we get them up there, and we got the flight deck crew involved in this, and they have a mock model of the aircraft carrier in flight deck control, very much like this table, and they have a little F-14 model where an F-14 is, literally out on the deck, and that's how they kind of keep track of where everything is. And so we get him around this table and we're like, okay, here's the deal. You know, we've seen some monkeys down on the aft end of the ship. When you're going to need 2 guys posted down there. We're going to need 2 guys over here. We're going to start a line. And we're going to push them this way. Whatever we get down there, the Marines are going to take care of them down there. You know, we get them all. You know, this whole game plan, and we get them out there, and the whole time, you know, in the background, we're taking pictures, and so they got out there, they're looking, and we hear, I found one! Like, really? Okay, so we run over there. Where is he? I think he went back there, you know. Really? Okay. No, listen, here, I see one over here, you know. Where do these guys see him? Anyway, we let him go for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, and then we finally said, get back downstairs. There's no monkeys. I knew it the whole time. Right? So.
Hey, jump down to number 1. Excluded.
After your service ended, what did you do? Did you go into work, or did you go to college on GI Bill?
Went to college on the GI Bill in flight school. So I was dual enrolled. I was going to flight school while I was at college. So I did that for I don't know, about a year, and then went to work while I was going to college. So.
How did your military service affect your occupations?
So it certainly reshapes your thinking about a lot of things. It shapes your worldview, and I think it sets you up to be much more successful than you would be otherwise. Some of the the hardships that you go through through the military, really kind of show you how precious life is, and really show you to what extent your capabilities are. So, I think it helped me tremendously.
Yes, sir.
During your service, did you make any close friendships?
Yeah. I kept in contact with about a half a dozen of the guys that I flew with. One of them is Benny Giles. He was my rescue swimmer instructor. And then by the time I got to the fleet in Jacksonville, he was the leading petty officer there, so he was my boss. And I remembered him as the meanest instructor you'd ever know, and he just terrified the students. But when I went to work for him at HS3, just totally had your back, nicest guy. And so to this day, I talk to Benny on occasion, and we'll catch up every month or so, 2 months. And Jeff Kramer's another good friend of mine. He went to work for the DEA afterwards, and he lives in Texas somewhere, like around San Antonio, and we're actually having a reunion, an HS3 reunion down in San Antonio in January, so get to see some old friends. So.
Yes, sir.
Do you still?
Yeah.
Have you been involved in any veterans organizations?
No, I haven't. I always see the VFW around, but I've just never really had time to get plugged in. So no.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Patrick, for your service and for your time today and for your interview. I'd also like to thank Joshua Newcomb for helping me out today with the interview. Kind of off the spur of the moment here. Thank you for helping me out, and also for Jamie Sanders, our cameraman.
And it was really cold up there. And we had been flying around, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we look down and we see this huge life raft that you'd find on a ship, and it was covered so you couldn't see inside of it. It was one of these yellow inflatable ones. So we didn't know where it had come from. We didn't know if there was anybody in it. We didn't know if there had been a ship that sank and these people are stranded. So we kind of flew over it, hovered over it, hoped that someone would stick their head out, but no one did. So we're like, okay, well, what if they're unconscious? So we finally just decided to go ahead and put me in the water and find out if there was anybody in it. So by then it was nighttime, and the sea state, it was like 30-foot sea state, huge waves. So I went in the water, and I remember we lowered me down because we couldn't get close enough to the water to let me jump out because the waves just too high. So as they were lowering me down, the wave would hit me, and then all of a sudden I'd be airborne again. Another wave would hit me, and then I'd be airborne again. Finally, I got tired of getting beat up, so as soon as the next wave hit, I unclipped and I started swimming for it. And I was probably dropped 50 yards from the raft, and so I was swimming for it. And at one point I could see it, and then it would just disappear, and then I could see it, and so, anyway, I finally got there, and I remember being terrified of what I was about to find in this thing, so I rip it open real quick, like, it was like peeling back a Band-Aid. I was like, just get it over with, right? I look inside, and it was empty. I'm like, oh my gosh, all this for nothing, right? So I pulled out my knife and popped it, and it sank. And trying to get back to the helicopter at night in that kind of waves, it took me probably about 4 or 5 tries to get a hold of the hook and get attached before the thing ripped me out of the water. And I was freezing cold. It was just that was a crazy night.
Yes, sir. Did you ever figure out why there's a raft floating out there?
You see a lot of crazy things on the ocean, things that are just floating around, and you think, well, where does this come from? But never knew.
Do you recall any particular humorous or unusual event?
Oh yeah. We like to do a lot of pranks on the ship to pass time. And one of the pranks was as you travel through the Straits of Gibraltar, Spain and Morocco are not very far away from each other, and there are these huge cliffs, and across the cliffs are these high tension lines, power lines. And I mean, they are really high, but when you're on an aircraft carrier, that aircraft carrier just barely fits underneath those cables. So the rumor is that these monkeys can climb up these cable lines and drop down onto your ship. So we always go through the straits at night because of security reasons. We don't want the whole world knowing whether there's an aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean or not. So about a day ahead of the passage of the straits, we're getting all of our new guys fired up and saying, we got to post some monkey watches tonight, and since you're the new guy, guess what? You get monkey watch. So they're like, really? So you get them all dressed up, and we take duct tape and duct tape the pant legs, and put gloves on them and duct tape their wrists, and we get combat helmets on them with lights, and we give them a broom pole with a chem light at one end and a flashlight on the other, and we just get them all geared up. And the whole time we're like, okay, look, if you see a monkey, all you do is point them out and call for somebody. Don't get tangled up with a monkey. I mean, they are mean, and they get all psyched up and scared, and so we get them up there, and we got the flight deck crew involved in this, and they have a mock model of the aircraft carrier in flight deck control, very much like this table, and they have a little F-14 model where an F-14 is, literally out on the deck, and that's how they kind of keep track of where everything is. And so we get them around this table, and we're like, okay, here's the deal.
we've seen some monkeys down on the aft end of the ship. When you're going to need 2 guys posted down there. We're going to need 2 guys over here. We're going to start a line. And we're going to push them this way. Whatever we get down there, the Marines are going to take care of them down there. You know, we get them all. You know, this whole game plan. And we get them out there, and the whole time, you know, in the background, we're taking pictures and. So they got out there, they're looking, and we hear, I found one! Like, really? Okay, so we run over there. Where is he? I think he went back there, you know. Really? Okay. No, listen, here, I see one over here, you know. Where do these guys see him? Anyway, we let him go for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, and then we finally said, get back downstairs. There's no monkeys. I knew it the whole time. Right? So.
Jump down to number 1. Exclude.
After your service ended, what did you do? Did you go into work, or did you go to college on GI Bill?
Went to college on the GI Bill in flight school. So I was dual enrolled. I was going to flight school while I was at college. So I did that for about a year, and then went to work while I was going to college. So.
How did your military service affect your occupations?
So it certainly reshapes your thinking about a lot of things. It shapes your worldview, and I think it sets you up to be much more successful than you would be otherwise. Some of the the hardships that you go through through the military, really kind of show you how precious life is, and really show you to what extent your capabilities are. So, I think it helped me tremendously.
Yes, sir.
During your service, did you make any close friendships?
Yeah. I kept in contact with about a half a dozen of the guys that I flew with. One of them is Benny Giles. He was my rescue swimmer instructor. And then by the time I got to the fleet in Jacksonville, he was the leading petty officer there, so he was my boss. And I remembered him as the meanest instructor you'd ever know, and he just terrified the students. But when I went to work for him at HS3, just totally had your back, nicest guy. And so to this day, I talk to Benny on occasion, and we'll catch up every month or so, 2 months. And Jeff Kramer's another good friend of mine. He went to work for the DEA afterwards, and he lives in Texas somewhere, like around San Antonio, and we're actually having a reunion, an HS3 reunion down in San Antonio in January, so get to see some old friends. So.
Yes, sir.
Do you still? It's good to know.
Yeah.
Have you been involved in any veterans organizations?
No, I haven't. I always see the VFW around, but I've just never really had time to get plugged in. So no.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Patrick, for your service and for your time today and for your interview. I'd also like to thank Joshua Newcomb for helping me out today with the interview. Kind of off the spur of the moment here. Thank you for helping me out, and also for Jamie Sanders, our cameraman.
We would fly quite a bit during Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and on this cruise we had to go into the Red Sea because Saddam Hussein started acting up again, and we had to go set him straight, bomb him a couple of times. So we were in the Red Sea, and I flew to Riyadh. So I always say that is how I literally traveled around the world. 180 or 360 degrees.
Yes, sir.
I crossed right there at Riyadh. But that was it.
You were saying something about WOG Day across the equator?
Yeah.
I got a camera here. So.
Oh, you're filming that? Okay, so WOG Day is when you're initiated
from a slimy, spineless organism to becoming a shellback, a real sailor. And it's for those that have crossed the equator. And the night before, you have what's called a WOG revolt. So we had to make these T-shirts, these WOG T-shirts, and we went around and we found our favorite shellbacks, and we tie them up and we do all kinds of crazy stuff to them. And we revolted, and they were all hiding in the ready room, and we were over in berthing. You know, they didn't dare come down our way. You know, and we'd go down there and snatch one every once in a while and drag them back. So then, early in the morning, probably about 3 o'clock in the morning, WOG Day started, and they got their fill of revenge. We had to wear everything inside out and backwards. So you had to wear your underwear outside of your pants, which were on backwards and inside out. Underwear inside out and backwards. Shirts on inside out and backwards, and you couldn't walk anywhere. You had to crawl on all fours because you were not worthy to walk upright. And they made these shillelaghs from fire hoses. They were about that long, and they were supposed to take out the rubber interior of the fire hose because that really hurts. And they would make a kind of a handle on one end, and most of them still had the rubber in there, and they would literally beat us to death with those things. Oh, it hurt. All day long you're getting beat. And then you were put on trial, and we had this mock, yeah, this is what sailors do. You know, you ask me what they do, we don't do any real work. I mean, they had this judge and jury, and you know, you had your attorney that was representing you, and it was just this elaborate trial that they put you on. You were being charged with, you know, scurvy crimes against, you know, the deep sea, and it's just wild stuff. And you're like, not guilty, Your Honor, and the attorney would say, no, Your Honor, we plead guilty. I'm like, are you my attorney or what? We plead guilty, and next thing you know, they're dragging me out. You know, they do all kinds of crazy stuff. Then the last part of WOG Day was you had to go through the I forget what they call it. It was basically the whole ship came out to the flight deck and created a winding, spiraling line with 2 shellbacks on each side of you, and you had to crawl on your hands and knees on non-skid while everyone beat you. And there were certain things you had to do along the way. There was one, they'd find the fattest guy on the ship that you'd find, and they would get his belly covered with lard and stick a cherry in his belly button, and you'd have to go in with your teeth and get the cherry. They had the WOG Queen. They would dress up some sailor, you know, as a woman, and he'd have a mop on his head, and dressed up in a dress and everything, and you had to kiss the WOG Queen. And then there was the Tunnel of Truth, which looked like one of these kids' play tunnels that, you know, fold up, you know, they contract, and they crawl in and out. Well, they had been saving up food from the galley and letting it rot for like 2 weeks. So they filled this tunnel full of rotten food, and you had to crawl through the thing. And of course, halfway through, you know, most of the guys just puked. So you're crawling through food and puke and trying not to puke. I got all the way to the end of the tunnel without puking. And there's my chief petty officer Spaulding. He actually played, he was like a movie star. He played in A Few Good Men on the jury panel.
Oh, wow.
And he was just this character, and I get to the end of the tunnel and he said, "Did you puke? Did you puke?" Nope, I didn't. And he was this guy that could puke on command. He would just go, and then puke. It's crazy. So that's what he did, and I lost it. I'm like, you gotta be kidding, I puked at the end. Anyway, then you had to go through this, they had this engine casing that they transport large jet engines in. So it was this huge upside down barrel looking thing. And they filled it with water, and you had to go in underneath the water, and that represented the actual equator. You went underneath the equator, and you came up a shellback, and you threw all your clothes off the aft end of the ship because they were trashed and smelly and everything else. So you walked naked, and this was, of course, back before women were on board ships. You walked naked back to your berthing, and it was over. So that was WOG Day.
WOG Day.
Good old WOG Day.